So I know it was advertised advanced, but I thought maybe just more than basics to start us off. So there. So I thought I would just go over. We talked about grant ledger summary, payroll summary in the last session, but we'll actually dive into it so that you guys can have some hands-on experience. But I'll go over just some simple things about the supplier invoice, expense reports, and I'll show you some examples from mine that from the school that you can see and where you can sort of make some tweaks and changes. And then we'll have some year-end closing of grants, just some examples and scenarios that we can talk about, or if you guys have any questions about that. And then HR questions. Marilee said there might be some HR questions, so we thought I'll do a quick whirlwind round of questions for HR. And then some tips and tricks and more sort of KBAs that I talked about from Tuesday, the knowledge-based articles that you guys can look at. Okay. So when you receive supplier invoices, and you you should have them forwarded to ubc.invoices@ubc.ca, or you can even have the supplier send it directly there. Make sure the invoice is made out to UBC, and preferably say UBC, School of Nursing, and whoever their contact is. So it could be, say, Allison, for example, right? And the reason why they ask for this is because when it comes to them, it's central processing. So it's sent to that, and then an accounts payable processor from central finance would actually pull that and then process it. But if they don't know which UBC department, or if they don't know who the person should be sent to, then it's going to be stuck in the queue for a little bit until they figure that out. We've actually had invoices, like photocopier invoices that were sent to us, and it's not actually for School of Nursing, it's for another department. So then I would have to send a note, write an email and say, hey, this is not for us. Right? And then there's something called invoice coding. So it might have shown up if you've had invoices made out to your name. It's called invoice coding. It's a step first before you get it all approved. And this is where you would put in your speed chart, your expense category that you want to choose for, to be put in. For example, like consulting would be a common one. Another one would be maybe IT services, so forth. And then, so the person who is named on the invoice will get the invoice coding. However, if you delegate it to our staff, they can help you with the invoice coding. And if you delegate to our staff and you put a notification for it, then you'll get the notification when it's done. I think some of you guys are doing that right now. You've delegated? Yeah.
I have a question about invoice.
Yeah.
So I get two types of invoices. One is from the supplier. Like, for example, we do a lot of transcriptions, right? So I get an invoice and I send it to Exo and I tell them the brand name, right? And that supplier is already, I think, in the system.
Yeah.
But then there's some invoices I get from our collaborator, like, so from our, like in PHAC funding, we have a collaborator who send me travel invoices. How do we deal with those? Do we also send it to, like, delegate someone and say that this is from this grant? And how do we deal with that?
So is the supplier set up?
They won't be supplier, right? Because it's with our collaborators, if they travel, they send me their travel invoices because
They're still a supplier, whether they're a company or individual, they're still called a supplier. So if they're not set up in the system, we have to set them up in the system. And it can be an individual, and then if it's just a reimbursement, just let Ixu and Charlotte know that it's only for reimbursement, that there's no requirement of SIN. Because they will ask for a SIN number for individual supplier. Does that make sense? So if they're not in the system, you can always ask Ixu or Charlotte to check. If they're not in the system, then we would set them up in the system. It's probably best to go through Ixu or Charlotte to do the setup. It'll be a little bit quicker.
When the staff, they would need the SIM or they should not.
Well, if it's just reimbursement,
Then no.
no.
Yeah.
And then just let Charlotte and Ixu know it's just reimbursement, and then they will make a note on it when they set up the supplier saying it's just reimbursement, no SIN required. They still may ask, but then we would just push back again.
But it's in for.
You would need a SIN, yes. Hi, Nancy.
For services.
For services, yeah, you need a SIN, but it's just like parking, accommodations, and then once the invoice coding is done, then it gets sent back to that same accounts payable processor to make sure you've done it correctly. And then it comes to the approver on the grant. So Ixu and Charlotte, on the most part, they can help. I know sometimes you guys may have, so one thing about invoice coding, they kind of put the accounts payable processor, they kind of put the expense category they think is the right one based on reading the invoices. I find it's not always accurate. I would always double check that, right? Sometimes you might come across an error when you're doing the invoice coding because the tax may be incorrectly inputted or the tax code is incorrect. If you are struggling with that, just reach out to Ixu and Charlotte and they can totally help you with that. Okay. Or just let them know, can you do the invoice coding for me? This is the speed chart and this is where I want to charge it to, right? And then that's easy. They'll just fix that and they'll figure out the tax part for you. So the terms of payment is usually 30 days. But if it's a rush, we can change it to immediate. And I can show you, I'll give you an example of that. So if we're able to do it in the invoice coding step, that's great. We can change it to immediate. But if it's already pushed through and they go, oh no, it's a rush, then we'll have to put a ticket in, and they're usually pretty responsive on the ticket. Or they'll let you know, oh, that's already been put through, or they'll give you some more information. Sometimes you can't see that on the system.
That's a good question. For research participation kind of honorariums, I usually just check the immediate. Is that okay?
Yeah, you could do immediate.
It's like in our consent that, you know, it says.
Yeah.
After your interview, you'll get it right away.
Yeah, you can set it up as immediate. And usually if you ask Ixu and Charlotte to do it, they can set it up as immediate. Yeah.
And we have like a lot of participants doing, you know, something every week. So I usually just do all that. But should I already went to the department? To you?
Well, if you have a lot and you want to do some, then you can ask the staff to do some of it too. Yeah.
But you're okay if I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done many?
Mhm.
It's not that hard, right?
No, it's
Yeah.
just so quick. Yeah, it's almost more time to like delegate it than it is to just.
Marilee, I guess you share the slides with everyone afterwards. There is actually a KVA on invoice coding that you guys can look at. So I'll give you an example. Two, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this one is already completed, but I'll just show you how to maneuver and sort of look at the information. So this is one of our RICO invoices. And this is approved. You can see it's been approved and it's been paid. So here it's net 30 and it's defaulted to net 30, but you can always change it to immediate. So when you come in the invoice coding, I think it's in the middle of the screen when it shows up. Right? I always like to put a memo. I actually train my staff, don't leave any memos blank. Because sometimes it saves you an extra click in looking at the transaction when you look at the ledger, because it's already set in the memo, right? So here, for example, the spend category is there. Sometimes it's incorrect when it comes from the accounts payable processor, so double check that. The code, tax code may be incorrect. You might have to double check that. Or sometimes when you put all that information in, it changes the tax code, then you have to go back and change it. But you can always ask the staff to help you with that.
So when you say double check, that means, oh, look, it might be wrong, and then you change it, or you get help to change it. It
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
need to go all the way back.
No, it will show up as an error code that it says something about the tax. Yeah, it will probably drive you guys crazy. So it's best if you ask the staff to help you. So the staff and I meet, at least 2 times a week, and I kind of go through it, because usually you guys have delegated to me as well. And I said, okay, I see this invoice, supplier invoice coding. It's been outstanding for 13 days. And I'll ask the staff to follow up with you guys. Okay. And then as you could see here, this is where usually I don't like to leave this memo blank even. I fill in all the memos, and then you would put in here, this one is a program, but you would put in your grant here. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. So this is it. This is a lot of information, even if you want to look at a past invoice. Any comments is on there as well, but you can look at also like the tax code here. There's tax information. We just pay GST. We pay GST and PST on this. You can, if you want to pull up a past invoice, you can look at attachments. There's the invoice. This will also show any activity. So if a check's been cashed, it will say reconciled, or it hasn't been cashed, it will say unreconciled. And then the process history, it shows all the people who touch this transaction. And then it needs to get to Workday service in order for it to be processed. So this is how you sort of take a quick look at an invoice. Okay. So let's go back
And
to.
you can't edit in that, and we have to send it back instructions.
Yeah, you have to, if it's already been processed, then you have to put a ticket in. Yeah. Any questions on the supplier invoice? Okay, expense reports. I've also attached the KBA for the expense reports. So you'll see expense reports. If you put in the search bar, you'll come up with a whole bunch, right? We'll see that one where Lisa, you were asking about, but I'll show you. I'll send you that one later. Okay. So there's different transactions. Visa. Some of you might have visas. That one will show. It'll give you step by step. Also, there's one that shows how a delegate can do the expense reports. So Allison, if you wanted to get Eric or someone, Andy to Anya to do your expense reports, that's possible. Okay. And I'll give you an example of that. I'll pull one from my expense report so that you guys can see what I've done. So this is the expense report, and I don't know if we could, it's quite small to turn it around. But once again, the memo, there's a, when you go to the header tab, there's a memo, you don't leave blank. And then you go through the process when you do the attachments. But another thing that's important when you do afterwards look at an expense report is when you look at it, there's something called business process. There's an extra tab that's not there when you first made the expense report. And you could see what people have done and if there's additional comments. For example, the accounts payable or manager may say, can you revise this based on this information or so forth. So there is an extra business process tab that you can see what happened there. But the expense lines, it's quite easy. The expense item, usually if it's catering or parking, accommodation, you can easily just fill that out. If you're not sure the exact term, just punch it in and see what the list they'll come up with. They'll try to, because they're thinking that it's not just finance people filling out the expense forms. So they're trying to accommodate and make it flexible. The other thing is, there is a special tax code for the Lower Mainland because of the transit tax, and they finally created that. So if you need help with the parking tax codes and so forth, we can help you with that. But the main thing as I wanted to show was, which unfortunately I can't show on the screen right now, was the token of appreciation. That's usually say participant fees or something like that. Make sure you provide either a list of names or a list of anonymous. Oh, a list
I'm
of
gonna have to turn some dollars.
list of names or a list of anonymous sort of the we have a template that you could use and you can always pull that. And the reason being is they usually ask. So here, for example, Starbucks gift cards that I was sending out. I actually have their names. No worries. I actually have the list of names on that spreadsheet there. They'll ask you for more information if you don't provide it. Okay.
Like IDs, names of the child's event.
Yeah, you can do a reference code and make sure you have that reference code in your own records if it's for anonymous
Yeah.
participants. Yeah.
Because I usually do that. I made Excel sheet with only IDs.
Yeah.
And then though I have the record with the IDs, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna send it to.
Yeah. So you just send the ID sheet to
Yeah.
them. Yeah. Okay.
I can't remember, I didn't.
I just have a blank screen share.
Me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's paused for some reason.
Just as this, early has started screen sharing.
That I actually print. Let's stop it for a sec. And go back to sharing it. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I know some of you might be new and don't realize that you can add expenses. So you can have like 4 lines of expenses in one expense report. Okay. Yeah, the main thing I wanted to show was the token of appreciation that you should provide a list, even if it's anonymous, to provide that list. Sometimes they still push back on the anonymous list, but we then push back to them and says, no, we've done this. If not, refer to this accounts payable manager who I've worked with in the past.
May I ask if you're funding those tokens of appreciation, other research grants covered by ethics and stuff like that, wouldn't it just be research participations?
Yeah, you could do research participants as well. Yeah. Most likely you would use that one, this one, because it's not a research. I'm not paying this through a research grant. You can use token of appreciation as well. Because sometimes you have, they're not true research participants. They might be consultants on your research group. Then you might use token of appreciation instead. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the slides. Any questions on that? No. I know some of you do PD through the expense reports. I recommend you to work with Ixu and Charlotte on that. And the reason being is there's extra steps compared to a regular expense report, and they would know the extra steps because we've gone through the training and so forth. So I would recommend going through them for that.
It might save 2 hours.
Yes. It'll save more of your time, right? And then and then unfortunately, if you've charged it to the grant and you want to claim it for PD thereafter, there's an extra step. Unfortunately, whoever the PD is claimed for, they have to do it themselves. But you can always Zoom with our staff and they can help you with the process. And I've trained Andy on that. I think you've done one already, right, Andy? Yes. So, okay. All right, let's go back to the slide. Okay, there you go. So there's also KBA and the grant ledger summary. So just to go over for fiscal years April to March, for example, this year would be April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023. That's called the fiscal year FY 2023 on Workday. So if you're if you're looking for last year's, you have to state the fiscal year and specific months. For example, for this year, if you're looking for August 2022, you actually have to put FY 2023 August. Okay. And then there's another, when we go to the general when we go to the grant ledger summary, there's something called the time period box. You need to change that if you're going for, say, fiscal year 2022. You have to change that to last 12 periods versus current fiscal year to date. And I think we should go through an example. So if you want to go to your research grant dashboard, I'm not going to do it on the screen because otherwise it shows too much information. Yeah. So if you guys could go into there. The grants ledger summary. Top one of the reports. You know, I'm having troubles. We've got to go back to basics. Okay, so then you could put one of your grants in there. Do you know any of your grants? The NBW policy?
Yeah, where do I put it?
On the top.
Right here?
Yeah, it was an organization.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where it goes. See, I wouldn't think that was, and just,
Yeah, it shows
oh my
like.
God, that's so simple. I think there's a session between the last one and this one.
Well, that's why we do this one, so you could actually have hands-on.
And here's the example, of course, of the sub, this is the sub.
Yeah, so pick the
Pick the sub-grant. Yes, sub-grant.
Because, okay, yeah, and then get anywhere on the screen, not on all that, so you can get out of it. So the period, the third box, you can change that to say, oh, I just want to look at the expenses up to November. You can actually change that to say FY 2023 and then pick November. If you can't see it because it only shows December and January, the current ones, you can actually go click on it where it says all periods. And then it says past years.
And then, but you could only pick 1 month at a time, is that right?
If you pick 1 month, it goes up to that fiscal year to that month. So if you say you pick August, it will show from April to August of that fiscal year. Okay, so that's how you would pick it.
But there's no way, thinking we're 3/4 of the way to the grant, there's no way to get the report that looks at like the first 3/4 of this fiscal year.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So it'll be April, May, June. So you would pick June. So you would pick year in 2022.
Yeah.
You pick FY 2023. So you have to go kind of
To year, back to year.
Just
trying to see on that.
all periods. And then pick fiscal 2023, and then so April, May, June, right? So then you pick June.
This was a problem I had before. I didn't see that. Yeah.
So if you pick June, then it's just the first quarter. And you can type that once you get. And then the time period, if you're picking this fiscal year, of course, it's current fiscal year to date. But if you say you pick FY 2022, make sure you change that box to say last 12 periods. Otherwise, it won't read it properly.
Wait a sec, I'm sorry, where is the last 12?
So where it says time period,
Oh, here.
yeah, so you're okay if you're gonna pick this fiscal year, but if you don't, just X out that, just put LAS and then 12, it'll pick it up, okay? And then, are people able to read their reports? You can hit. I'm okay with this. I want you to see. Scott. What did you want to see?
I'm trying to see the current fiscal year,
Yeah.
and I can maybe see that.
So I know here that was. And which one, which grad?
Thank you.
Yeah, so. Thanks. Favorites. Okay, and then you went up to January?
Yeah.
Okay, and then just hit. OK. If you just want to see up to like current, you just fill in the top, the organization of the grant you want to see, and then hit OK. So it does take a while to load up, and the reason being is they're pulling information from the RISE. They're trying to pull the budget information from the RISE, so that takes a little bit longer. So if you ever run a ledger summary that I mentioned in last Tuesday's workshop, then that one is much quicker. So if you want to look at your grant, just look at the expense, but not actually what your balance available, you can go through that route and pull it up. But it's not going to be accurate in terms of your balance available or the budget information. Sometimes it loads, sometimes it doesn't, and you don't know when it doesn't do it, right? So best to do it as a grant ledger summary.
Ellen, is there a way to run them? I just tried it right now and actually it didn't work, but I'm just curious, like for discretionary accounts where we're assigning an activity code for specific things that we want sort of categorized.
Yeah.
Is there a way to run a grant ledger summary report just for that activity
Yeah.
code?
Yes. Okay. So if you know your activity code.
Yeah, I do.
You go back to this. Where it says Workday, click it.
I know I put it in there and I can in here.
And you need to put.
Yeah.
Right. Did you enter any expenses on that activity code yet?
Yes.
What's the last digits for your activity code?
4018.
I'll take a look at that. Anyone else having problems? No, okay. Does that make sense?
I know.
Is it in the wrong one?
So when we are reading this summary,
Mhm.
and so these are all salaries, right? But if I want to see how much we have spent on travel, how much we have. So,
Yeah, so if you slide it over, it will say a total,
yeah.
right? Right, it'll say a total for that expense.
But where would travel come? Which category is the travel?
The travel is there's various ones on the travel. So another way to do it, if you look in the blue banner, when you pull up your ledger, you'll see an Excel sheet on it. So this, you can click on that, on the blue banner. What's this? Right there. Oh, and you can download onto Excel. You can ignore that message and just wait a little bit. If you don't ignore that message and you click on that orange banner, it will show up on your notifications when it's ready to, when it's finished.
Right, future.
Okay.
Correct one, MK.
MKFW. We will do, okay,
Right,
yeah, even when you click down on the, say, month transaction, when it pops up. There is an Excel spreadsheet for you to extract it to. So if you see the Excel symbol, the second one right there, yeah, you can do it that way. And then downward. And then it'll show up.
Because completely this budget transfer, so I want to see how much is left. From my travel to move it to salaries, because we didn't travel much. So what we had as 30%, we have to do that, I wanted to see how much we have for traveling, for the.
Yeah, so you should be able to see it. We can do it on a different session,
Okay.
but you can check the travel. Not very pretty on the laptop, but if you're able to move it down, or you can just extract it to Excel, and then you can see the travel expenses, how much you've spent today.
No, but my question was because when I see it on this, right? So, yeah, these are, does it come under supplies? Where does it come? Under?
Oh, there should be travel. If there's no travel expenses,
Yeah.
then it's zero. It won't show up at all. It only shows up, the expense only shows up if
It is under travel,
if you have travel expenses.
but we
So-
had, I don't know, maybe
But you
that's not
should-
invoiced yet. I got like,
Yeah,
that was, I got invoices from my grade that we travels, I wanted to put,
yeah, so that means you haven't had travel expenses yet, so it won't show up on your ledger. Because actually there is a ledger for travel,
oh, it will come only if we.
only if
I
you
thought it
have
would
it.
come zero. Like,
No,
you know?
no, only shows up if you have the expense.
Okay.
Okay, so right now you have
Yeah.
zero travel expenses on that, correct? Okay. All right. So let's go to another slide. Any other questions on the grant ledger summary? The payroll summary, it's similar. So that's usually the second line on your reports. But it's quite powerful tool. So if you wanted it up to current date, that's fine. If you only wanted, say, I want to move my employee salaries from September to October or something like that, or you can pick the month October, and then you can pick that particular employee as well. Or you can pick more than one employee. You can pick 2 employees or 3 employees, as many employees as you want specifically. Then it won't show all the other employees, it will only show those specific employees. So when you want to specify those employees, just put it in the work tags where it says work tags. So the top part, you put the grad, and then there's a date there, and then underneath there's a work tags, you could put the employee name in there. Does that make sense? Awesome. Right, and then where it says work tags, you put the an employee who's charged on that here. There. If you don't,
It's by grant, but if I want all the grants instead of it, then I can't choose all of this.
yeah, you can choose more than one. You can even choose more than one grant.
But I'm always confused why MUBG is twice. But usually I know this one is the one I see.
Yeah,
Right,
so
second-
these ones are the sub grants that we talked about on Tuesday. Were you were there on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the sub grants. You'll see that it has the same speed chart, but the
Yeah.
grant numbers. different. Yeah. So usually if you want to look at the main
Main grant.
grant, it doesn't have a suffix after your PI's name. Okay,
Okay, so I can check all of these grants to
Yeah.
see what on.
you can pick more than one grant.
Yeah.
So if you have employees who are over multiple grants, you can pick more than one grant. If you're, even if you don't put the grant, I wonder if it works for you, because I worked for me, but if you don't pick grant, you just put the name under the work tag, see if you can. And then say, for example, you're paid over multiple grants, you just put the name, see if it works. So let's see. if-
But then in my organization, what will they put? Just. What did I put here?
Oh, it does, you have to put an organization.
Then that would be that grant, right?
Then you have to put the multiple
What's
grant.
our grant?
Unless you ask me to pull it, then it'll be easier for me to pull it for you guys, if that's the case. Because you guys don't have access to a central, the cost center and so forth. So it would probably be best if we pull it for you.
We want for all salaried employees, which all grants are there on, right? So.
I need to know all the
Yeah.
names.
But that is easy, pulling out from these multiple grants instead.
Yeah, yeah.
I want that person, how many grants they are on, and then
Yeah.
we wanna move them around.
Yeah, so if you want it done that way, I'll show Charlotte how to do it, but Charlotte has been given access. Andy has access as well. I'll show them how to do it, and then you guys can ask them to pull it for you guys. It's quite easy actually to pull for us, that was because we have access to the central account.
Because that helps with the JVs, right? So if I want to see. I
Yes,
wanna move around with next month a lot, so I just need to see.
yeah, so you just have to tell us which employees you want to see,
uh,
and then we can pull that report for you.
Okay.
Okay, that might be easier than you trying to figure that out. Sure, Allison.
Right now, I'm looking at, so it's only by grant, but if it's an employee who's employed on 2 different grants,
Mhm.
does this give me all the information?
Only shows to one graph, so you can pick, so if you click on the screen, on the blank screen.
Right here.
Yeah, click on there. And what's the other graph? Engagement. So you can. And it'll give us both, yeah. Yeah, so. And then you hit the stick. Okay. So it can be quite powerful now. We didn't have that in the old people thought. Okay, any other questions about the payroll summary? Okay. Year-end closing of grants. So before any grant is closed, Research Finance will inquire with the PI about the financial reporting on the grant. And then also require a signature from the PI on that financial reporting. So I know there are faculty who are fairly new to that process, and they may say, oh, do I have to finish all that by March 31st? Because that's the end date of my grant. Not necessarily. Sometimes it carries over a couple months. Okay. And then if it's at zero balance, we can ask the PI or myself can CC the PI and say, can you please close this grant? And that I've done that a few times here and there. What to do if there's a balance, surplus or deficit remaining? We're going to have to clear that to make it to zero in order to close it. So you can move a few expenses around if you have more if there was a salary expense or there's other sort of supply expense, you can move that around to make it zero. And if you're not sure what to do, just maybe set up an appointment with me and then I can help you with that process. Any questions on that? No. Oh, Charlotte says, does the benefit show up differently in ledger? It would split into EI or CPP. It will split up. I'm just answering a question from Charlotte. And there is, when you do the ledger summary, if you click on the benefits, it will show the individualized for CPP, EI, vacation, and all that. Okay. HR, quick whirlwind round. So reminder, payroll submissions by the employees have to be done on the 8th and 23rd of each month. And then you have to approve by the 9th or the 24th of the next business day. So we, as the approver, have a little bit more leeway. The employee, even if the 8th or the 23rd falls on the weekend, they have to submit it by then. If for some reason they didn't have a chance to submit it by the deadline date and they come to you on the 9th or the 24th, I can still input it. Any person with a timekeeper role can still input it, and then the PI has to approve it. Okay, and that needs to be done by those dates. Student hires don't need job descriptions, but everything else does. And those job descriptions need to be approved by the compensation and expect at least a week if there's no concerns. If you're pretty much copying from another one you had before and you tweaked it to this project, then it's easy. It'll probably pass through in a week. But if it's a brand new job description, just expect it might take longer than a week. We usually say from new job description all the way to posting it take and hiring, or just even looking at resumes, it could take up possibly a month. Compensation, they have gone through some turnover, including management. So I'm finding that the team is it's not as easy to put through the job descriptions as it was in the past. So be ready to make changes. Okay. Job postings are at least a week. You can ask for longer, but it has to be at least a week. Although if you're looking for a research associate, that is a faculty position that has to be posted for 30 days. Postdoc multi-funding concerns. I know some PIs have postdocs that are coming from multiple sources. The only thing is we can't pay them until all the funds have come to UBC. So you might have to do some bridge funding from your discretionary accounts temporarily until all the funding comes into ORS.
And then what do we need to do to repay that bridge funding?
So if that's the case, once the funding has come in, let us know. And then we will manually transfer the ones that were charged to the discretionary over to the correct account.
The postdoc related, but funding related, do you know the copy of that Alan from the reimbursement from in the Workday?
They usually come on a quarterly basis, maybe a month after the quarter. But they were experiencing report issues. So sometimes it came to the grant directly, or sometimes it came to the cost center, which would be me, and I can do the transfer thereafter. But we usually got the email notifications for those, and you would have received that as well. Okay.
I have one quick question, maybe it's going beyond scope, but the student hires don't need job descriptions. Once students graduate and they remain employed on a grant, what is the process?
We have to create a job description. And if you want to pay them the same, because you have to be careful, because I know, we try to, make things better by paying them a little higher as a student. When we try to fit the job description, may not necessarily be the same. So just be careful of that. So we'll work with you on that. But that is also a consideration.
And that is effective when
The person
they
graduates.
actually graduate.
Yeah. So we've had instances where, say, for example, they finished all their requirements in December, but they don't actually graduate in May. So we had where we could still put them on a student appointment until May. Yeah, okay. Okay. Working outside of BC, WCB is provincially mandated. So every province will have a different sort of WCB bureaucracy and rate and so forth. So if you're we're having workers who are working elsewhere, and if there is an institution that they're working at, it's probably best to do a subgrant over. Another way is doing a contract, but even that can be questionable if we get audited by CRA. So just be careful. You may want to do a check-in with me and see if I need to do a check-in with Central HR if we can do it.
But if someone wants to work on a shorter time, like 3 weeks from Toronto.
That's not a problem as long as they're usually here in BC. Yeah, and that includes like working out of country as well.
But can we allow that or not say BC?
If they're working in Alberta for 3 weeks, that's not a problem because they're going to come back, right? But if they're going to do it on a regular basis and they don't come back, then no.
No, just like for a few weeks.
Just for a few weeks, yeah, that's not a problem.
And that holds for international, for example, US, if they want to work like just for 2 weeks and come back anyways. So
Yeah.
they can.
That's possible.
Okay.
That's not a concern.
What's
Yeah.
the preferred process for initiating grant transfer? For the start.
If you want to do a subgrant, you mean? There is a paperwork you can fill out from the ORS website or UILO website. And if you're not sure, you can do a check-in with Marilee, and Marilee can help with that. She's better off. She knows more than on that aspect. So that link goes straight to the search bar for the KBAs, and then you can put in whatever word. If you're having trouble finding it, let the staff know, and then the staff will help you with that. But I wanted to give you guys an extra resource just in case, because we've had turnover in staff and we might not be as quick to respond to all your questions. So I think it's great timing that Marilee booked this in January and this is happening right now. Any other questions? I hope this was helpful. Yeah. If there is, if I know Marilee's asked if there can be other sessions, if you guys have an interest in that, just express that. So then I know what else to prepare. But I'm hoping this is just like a quick tour. You guys can get going if you have questions. It's not so much like I'm starting you guys from scratch. And we're making this accessible so that other people who weren't able to attend can benefit from this as well.